We've already called to the vote, so I'll be brief. I just returned from the prayer breakfast, the National Prayer Breakfast, which is lovely and always hopeful that much was talked about in terms of ministering to needs of God's poor and all, and sounded very bipartisan. So, in any event, that at a time when this week the President released a budget that expresses those values, that is a statement of values of our country, a powerful budget for the future. It's dedicated to working families and recognizes that they are the backbone of our economy and our country, both of our democracy and our economy. The investments we make today have an impact on our future, as we all know, and a budget that invests today for the future in terms of strengthens our investments in education and job training and deepens our commitment to our veterans, 7.7% increase in funding, reduces the deficit by $2 trillion, again, strengthens America's investment in innovation, builds better paychecks, bigger paychecks, better infrastructure. The President's budget recognizes the reality that the middle class are the job creators in America. In a consumer economy, when workers have better wages and confidence to spend, they create demand, inject demand into the economy as they spend, and create jobs, which in turn reduces the deficit. It's about bigger paychecks. You cannot say it enough, about bigger paychecks. The success of the middle class is the most important engine of our economic growth and of meaningful deficit reduction. We keep coming back to that. Bigger paychecks, better infrastructure, greater prosperity for everyone. And as we do this to create more productivity, more job creation, more manufacturing in our country. It's a strong plan based on his middle-class economics that he put forth in the State of the Union address. Middle-class economics, it stands in sharp contrast to trickle-down economics that the Republicans have relentlessly pursued, a policy that got us into a fix in 2008, scarred the confidence of the American worker even as the economy improves. Still that concern that of 2008. So this week we have February 2nd, Groundhog's Day. We all know what Groundhog's Day is, even if we didn't see the movie. Even if we didn't see the movie 25 or 30 times. Republicans began the week celebrating Groundhog Week by bringing forth their 56th vote to repeal or undermine the Affordable Care Act. That's the bill they took up in rules on February 2nd. According to the CBO, 19 million previously uninsured Americans will be covered in 2015 thanks to the Affordable Care Act. The law has extended the life of Medicare by 13 years. And for 56 times now, the Republicans have brought forth a bill to undermine the Affordable Care Act. I think they're putting forth the illusion of it, because it can't possibly be taken seriously, but it is their latest ACA repeal or amend bill unveiled by Chairman Upton. It would hand the health care insurance back to the insurance industry. It raises health care costs on working families, increases the number of uninsured, jeopardizes the health of millions of Americans, but puts coverage for essential health care like maternity care up to the whims of the state. It's no longer a guarantee. Dismantles ACA's bedrock guarantee that you no longer lose or be denied coverage due to pre-existing conditions. It increases the deficit. It adds it takes away the Medicare cost reductions. There are many Medicare cost reductions for seniors. It eliminates those. So it seriously undermines the bill. It is, in fact, a repeal, but it is a repeal of all the things they profess. Oh, we don't want to repeal denying coverage for a pre-existing medical condition, all the rest of that. So, to judge by the priorities brought to the fore by this Congress, Republicans have little regard for the security of America's families, their economic security, their health security, and their homeland security. Republicans have not passed a serious Homeland Security funding bill. There are only 23 days left until the Department of Homeland Security shuts down on February 28th. One of their spokespersons, Mr. King, has said, I'm really not worried about the 27th coming and going. He's not worried about shutting down the Department of Homeland Security, which protects Americans. There are 23 days left until it's shut down. Only 8 of those are days in which Congress is in session. They are holding our Homeland Security hostage because of their opposition to common sense immigration reform that strengthens the economy. With all the other arguments we have about what how immigration invigorates America, according to the CBO, immigration reform would reduce the deficit by $138 billion over the first 10 years and $700 billion in the 10 years after that. So this is a deficit reducer. This is an extraordinary dangerous game the Republicans are playing about the safety of America's families. We have to pass a clean, long-term Homeland Security funding bill, and we have to do it immediately. As you've heard me say over and over, they kicked the can in December. They didn't want to pass a bill except for a short term till February, and saying that, oh, we'll take care of it after the new Congress comes in. As the new Congress was coming in, we saw what happened in Paris. The whole world was galvanized around Homeland Security. I mean, the whole world except for the hermetically sealed chamber of the House of Representatives, which then said that we're not doing it because we don't like what the president's doing on immigration. Something that he has every right to do in terms of the law and in terms of precedent. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Madam Leader, I'm wondering, following the horrific murder of the Jordanian pilot, whether you believe the administration should move quickly to help the Jordanian king get more equipment so he can take the fight to ISIS.
Yes. I know that some senators have signed a letter, something to that effect. I certainly support that. And so, yes, I believe that the administration should move quickly to give more capacity to the Jordanians. As you know, His Majesty was here, had go home when they learned of the tragedy, whenever it took place, but they're representing, but they made it known now. But thank you for your question.
On that front, what's the status of the authorization of military force? Have you heard from the White House about moving forward?
Yes, we have been in conversation with them. Three of our ranking members, plus one more member who's been very active in it. That would be the Authorization Committee is Foreign Affairs, so that's Elliot Engel, Armed Services, Adam Smith, Intelligence, Adam Schiff, and in addition to that, Chris Van Hollen, who's been very active on this issue for a long time. We've been talking to them about, and I assume they're having similar conversations with the Republicans, about an authorization of the use of military force around 3 points. One is time, what would be the length of time. 2, what would be the geography of it, or the extent of geography. And 3rd, what is the scope of the authorization. It would also involve repeal of the 2002 authorization, the authorization to go into Iraq, but would maintain the 2001 authorization to go into Afghanistan and the authorities given to the president in that. We don't have answers to those questions. I think they're talking about 3 years. There's a question of geography. Some people say very limited. Other people say boundless. And the scope language like enduring combat for troops on the ground. Obviously, if we go in and rescue somebody, we have we have boots on the ground. Let me start with your second part. Yes, we did have a meeting yesterday with our distinguished witness, Mr. Hoyer, Assistant Leader Clyburn, Mr. Engel, Ranking Member on Foreign Affairs, and Adam Schiff, Ranking on Intelligence. It was a a meeting put together rather rapidly because the speaker called us and said they thought there was bipartisan meeting, and since it isn't, would we meet with him, which we did. So anyway, that's the context. It was a very, shall we say, we are friends, and it was a meeting in friendship. I think it was a meeting, I would say, marked by sadness, on my part anyway, really sad that it has come to this, that, but hopefully there will be a path out of the situation that we are in. Many of us have been fighting the fight on nonproliferation for our whole lives and our whole political public service lives. And so we understand that even if Israel did not exist, we'd still have to make sure Iran did not have a nuclear weapon, because that's an arms race that in itself we can't have it, and the arms race it would lead to would be disastrous. So we all stipulate to that fact. I do happen to think that the creation of the State of Israel was the greatest political achievement of the 20th century, but nonetheless, even if it didn't exist, the United States is committed. It's a pillar of our national security and our foreign policy to stop the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. A nuclear weapon in Iran can't happen. So there's that. But this was really more about the casualness with which an invitation is extended to a head of state 2 weeks before his election, and politicizing deep convictions about the important relationship between Israel and the United States, our shared values, our shared national security interest. And I just would hope that as these negotiations go forward, diplomacy is given a chance, so that as we have every option on the table, we can demonstrate that we exhausted every diplomatic remedy, and please God, the diplomacy will work. So it was a meeting in that kind of friendship. I was interested in seeing this speaker again. I've seen him before, of course, when I was speaker and visiting Israel, when he was a member of parliament at Knesset, but not speaker at the time. But I said to him, you know, before I ever met you, before I was in Congress outside it was Soviet at that time in the 80s, advocating for the refuseniks, and of course he was a very well-known one at the time, and it was just wonderful to sit across the table seeing him as the Speaker of the Knesset. So again, some of these relationships are deep, even when we didn't know each other, and the friendship between our two countries is important to both of us. And our friendship with Prime Minister Netanyahu is respectful, but I think that I hope we can find another path to go forward. That was a reception to welcome the new members. It wasn't really.
Well, the White House has a photo of you and the president speaking one up.
Yeah, we were waiting for Mitch McConnell, who was coming, so we could all go out together. So it was really more about this, that, and the other thing. Any number of subjects came up fleetingly, including trade, and that was probably where, if you asked me what we were talking about, I would say trade. Did the other subject come up? Maybe for a moment.
Does the invitation, in your view, on the world stage undermine at all the American negotiator, the P5, negotiating position in the final sort of stages of this negotiation, or is it just kind of seen as an internal squabble that doesn't really tip the balance?
Well, I certainly hope it doesn't undermine our negotiating. No.
Have you heard any concerns from people in the position to know that it does?
I think the bigger concern was, would we pass sanctions before that was, and that's resolved. We're not passing further sanctions. Everybody knows we could pass sanctions at the drop of a hat. So it's not a question of we have to exploit this opportunity that we have now because it won't exist again. No, that moment exists whenever we choose to use it. So the fact that there's a recognition that further sanctions would undermine the agreement as how we go in. We shouldn't have more sanctions. They can't have any enrichment. And so those were some of the terms of bring people to the table. It was a really remarkable achievement of the Obama administration to bring together the P5 countries, plus one, the permanent members of the Security Council, plus Germany, in concert on in these negotiations. This is no small feat. And I was telling the Prime Minister, I mean, excuse me, well, him too, but yesterday the Speaker, that 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, some of us were traveling to Russia or meeting Russian officials here, to China, to say stop transferring technology to Iran, and to the Europeans, to the French and others, stop transferring technology. It's dual use. It's this. It's, the Russians said, "Well, you're the biggest arms salesman in the world. How are you to tell us not to transfer technology?" But we're talking about unconventional. The Chinese said, "We're not doing it," which of course they were, rig magnets, rocket delivery systems, and the rest of that. And the Europeans were saying, "Well, it's dual use. It's not really intended." But now just that is all to say, three countries I just named are part of the 6 countries that are engaged in these negotiations. That is a gigantic step forward and should not be devalued or taken lightly. And every one of those countries knows that it's very important to stop Iran from having a weapon of mass destruction.
Well, it sounds like, Madam Leader, what you're saying is that this has highlighted, politicized some debates about Israel here in this country. But if Prime Minister Netanyahu is trying to derail the deal with Iran, this episode, that it's not going to work.
Well, I'm hoping this doesn't take place. So I'm ever optimistic and hopeful. But the fact is, our negotiators are on track and firmly there. The question is, could that advocacy have resulted in passing of sanctions in the Congress? It didn't. So that was very important. But the fact is, these negotiations are under the auspices of from our side, from our point of view, of the President of the United States. And, again, we have great friendships in terms of country to country, leaders to leaders. It's really something that we should be able to resolve. Maybe we have to even review the idea of joint sessions of Congress, because they should not be a political arena 2 weeks before an election. There's some people who just think it's outrageous. Some staunch supporters of Israel have called me and said it's outrageous, and they're supporters of Netanyahu, that our floor of the House would be exploited in that way for a political purpose in Israel and in the United States. So, again, I've taken too long on this question, I know, because I have to go vote. And the Speaker's going to be here in just a minute because he doesn't have to vote. But let's put it this way. We all know that Iran can't get a nuclear weapon. We all know that everything is on the table, and in order to have moral authority on how we proceed, we have to have the world see that we tried everything with Iran. And hopefully that will work. And we all know that Israel's election is 2 weeks before, I suppose, its speech before the Congress. This is, I think, going forward in this way, the way this conversation is taking so much energy and it's really stressful, is really beneath the dignity of the challenge that we have. Stopping the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Respecting America's approach to this, which has brought 5 other countries to the table, across the table from Iran. I think they've done a wonderful job and deserve the right to have us in Congress support them, and that's my view on the subject.
Can I just follow up quickly, Madam Leader, because you said that you really hope it doesn't take
Yeah.
place. Do you get the sense from your meetings that the Israelis are considering,
No.
or the Prime Minister is considering?
No.
And what's your recommendation? So if they're not, and the Speaker's not going to change the date, what's your
I don't know.
recommendation to members who are considering a boycott?
Just ever hopeful that decision in favor of respecting our system would overcome it. You never know. Things happen in people's schedule. And they do. You just never know.
Baltimore.
As of now, I am. As of now, I am. Yeah. As of now, I am.
Are you looking to schedule something else?
No, I'm just saying that we'll just.
You sound to be leaving the option of boycotting open.
No, I don't think anybody should use the word boycott in this.
Will not attend.
Let me just tell you this. Do you know when these heads of state come? This is not, I mean, people are here doing their work. They're trying to pass legislation. They're meeting with their constituents and the rest. It's not a high priority item for them. So if you want to invite a head of state and have that invitation shared by your other leaders, because that's usually how it is passed, House and Senate, Democrat and Republican, and work with the White House, you have to demonstrate that you're going to fill those seats. And sometimes you look at that audience and it looks like every member, the average age of Congress is 21 years old. And you know that's not the case, not even close. So you can just imagine how low the age is of some of the people sitting in those seats.
To be clear, are you leaving the option of not going on the table? Are you considering not attending?
I'm seriously considering going. I mean, I am, as I said, as of now, it is my intention to go. It's still my hope that the event will not take place. There's a serious unease, but don't even think in terms of the word boycott. Members will go or they won't go, as they usually go or don't go. This is not anything. It was a surprise to me when I first came to Congress. It started to snow outside, and somebody said, "I'm going home." I was with these two senior members. They said, "I'm going home." I said, "Well, you'll never be back in time for the joint session." And they looked at me as if I were really a freshman. So in any event, again, with all the respect in the world for Prime Minister Netanyahu, we have welcomed him royally on 2 occasions to the Congress. Only Winston Churchill was welcomed 3 times, and one of them was during World War II. My father was there as a member from Maryland, December 26, 1941. I have the picture in my office. So it isn't that there isn't a respect and admiration, even an affection for the Prime Minister, and certainly the strong ties to Israel. But at this time, I think it would be better if we didn't have it. And that is, I think I've said quite a bit on the subject, right?
We have.
So you have to ask them how they thought the meeting went, the Israelis. We treated them with great courtesy and warmth and sadness. Thank you.